Today we are sewing up the Berryfield Park Pouch from Torie and Wren. I bought this pattern as soon as it was released. I started cutting out this pattern and then I read the pattern and I was like, oh my gosh, why did I wait this long? This pattern is going to be so quick and fun. It's a really basic pattern, but the designer put this really cool closure on it. So this pattern is going to be what I consider a very beginner friendly pattern, but it's going to be a great skill builder because we're going to work with some curves, we're going to work with binding, we're going to have a really unique shape. I'm hoping whenever I finish this that this will be a great pattern for me to start taking to craft shows. It was really quick to cut out, it's going to be quick to sew, and I'm hopeful that whenever it's sitting on my table it will just be very visually appealing and pull people into my table. The fabrics I'm using today are going to be from the Emporium, and it is on pre-order now. It's one of my favorite prints. I've made several bags with it. I'm using her cotton woven, but she does have it in a waterproof cotton and a vinyl. On the back of the exterior pieces I did add a piece of thermalin, and I kept it out of the seam allowance. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I talked about the fact that I bought thermalin that is not fusible. So what I did was I cut it so that it was kept out of the seam allowance. Then I used a piece of Royal Pixie Light to kind of fuse around it so it was like the glue holding it in place. It does mean that it's a little like maybe wrinkly or just not secured. It would have been much better if I would have had the fusible interfacing, but I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all of this interfacing. It's definitely going to get used, and I didn't realize that I'd bought the wrong one until I'd already opened the package. So I felt like since it was my mistake, I should just keep it and make do with it. When you cut out this pattern, you're going to cut out 2 of every piece. You get the pattern pieces for everything, even the binding, which is a cool way which she does it. We are doing a bias cut binding. I've already got mine cut out. I cut mine out the way I typically do, but she has a really unique pattern piece and walks you through those steps. So if you're not familiar with how to cut binding on the bias, definitely check that out too. For the pattern pieces, for this piece, she even gives you the 2 pieces so you don't have to mirror them. You will end up with the pieces that are mirrored, as you can see here, but you don't have to think about it. My exterior and lining are the same print. The only difference with mine is that my exterior will have the fleece added to it. So here is our zipper panel pieces. They are cut mirrored. She has a seam allowance drawn on each piece. Since I wanted to add the fleece and keep it out of my seam allowance, I just trimmed down the seam allowance and then cut my fleece out of those pieces. So here is 2 exterior and 2 lining zipper panel pieces. This is going to be your main piece. You're going to have 2 exterior, 2 lining. You can see that there's this really interesting little notch here at the top. Make sure you cut that out properly. On the exterior front, I put a cork tag. I just sewed that in place. On the exterior back, I added a woven label here at the top, just centered. Both of them are centered actually. We have the 2 lining pieces. Again, the Royal Pixie Light and thermalin on these pieces, nothing, just the cotton woven on the lining pieces. Then we have these side pieces. I have 2 exterior, 2 lining of these as well. Binding is cut on the bias, 1 piece of zipper tape and 1 zipper pull. This is all we need. I'm going to push everything to side, and the first thing we're going to work on is just these 2 exterior pieces, our front and our back. We're going to take these 2 exterior pieces and we're just going to place them together and sew along that bottom straight edge. You're going to use the seam allowance given in the pattern. Your constructing seam allowance does not change throughout the pattern. After you get those 2 pieces sewn at the bottom, the pattern tells us we can open or push the seam allowance to the side. I'm going to take this just a little step further, and I'm going to top stitch down both sides of the seam allowance just because I want it to really lay nice and flat. I'm top stitching just 1/8 of an inch away. This is not necessary if you want to skip this step. This is how my exterior looks. I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to pull out that lining, and we're going to do the same thing to the lining. We're actually going to do the same steps on the exterior and the lining, and we're going to create 2 individual pouches, one with the exterior and one with the lining pieces. Then we will put them together, and that's going to be what that little bit of bias binding is going to be for. I have the exterior and the lining main panel pieces sewn together there at the seam, and I top stitched them both open, which you don't have to do. I'm going to pull out one of my lining pieces for the side. Your lining pieces should not have any interfacing. If you wanted, you could put a little bit of stabilizer on there, but I'm not going to. I don't feel it needs it, and I feel like it could just be potentially adding some bulk to this pattern. So I'm going to take one of these side pieces, I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm not going to make a snip there, but you can. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a memory crease and then take it and directly put it on that seam that I just top stitched open. Do the same thing for the other side. Now the designer tells us that this next step she hand based. I am not going to hand baste. It's just not in my nature to hand baste. I'm going to start with the lining first. Start with your lining if you're a little nervous about these next steps, because your lining is going to be easier to work with and you get the practice before it's going to be really obvious on your exterior. What we're going to do is we're going to curve this around. I have another video that has this same similar technique to it, and I use glue. So you can see these pieces are matching up perfectly. You see those 2 points, just matching them up. We'll put a clip there. Now I'm going to try my best to not have to glue these together. That's why I'm starting with the lining. I'm going to kind of get my head around how tricky this is going to be. Is it going to fit easily? Are the shapes going to shift? And we are going to need to glue, hand baste, or staple, whichever is your preference in the sewing room. I've got the first side clipped. I'm going to start this second side by taking that top and going ahead and pulling it up all the way to that mark and matching that up first. Here is how that lining looks. You can see it's very floppy, and since I have no interfacing, I have the ability to kind of stretch and finagle if anything is wanting to get out of alignment. I want the edges of the side panel and the sides of these main panels to match up perfectly. If they start deviating, I'll pull out my stiletto, I'll pull out my hemostats and pull to keep them in line. The easiest steps would be to start sewing here and then just to go all the way around. But if it's not working, I can try to sew from one side to the middle, the other side to the middle. If that doesn't work, then we can go to glue, staples, whatever we need to kind of make this a better fit. I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together with the full seam allowance, but I am not going to risk anything getting out of alignment. I'm going to go very slow. It's a little tricky because when you can see whenever I take the clip off, it immediately wants to shift. This is why she suggests the hand basting. I'm not saying the hand basting won't help. I'm just saying I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to take my first stitch to kind of lock everything in. I'm not worrying about everything else. You can see right here, or if you can't, it's already shifted a little. So I'm not going to go any further until I can pull those 2 pieces together and take 1 stitch. I don't worry about what everything else looks like, just those 2 pieces lining up. If I need to push them together, I will. I'll just make sure I'm not sewing over a pucker or a bump. 1 stitch. Don't look at your needle. Make sure the fabrics are matching right there at that seam allowance mark, and just go slow. I'm taking off the rest of the clips because I ended up having a pucker here that wasn't able to smooth out, and so I said, you know what, I'm taking off the clips so I can just do this organically. So you can see I have it released there, nothing's attached, and now what I'm going to do is I want to push those 2 fabrics together just so I can take another stitch. 1 at a time, I will take those stitches and pushing them together. And so I'm just pulling the side pieces over and using my stiletto to push that main panel under, and it's lining up perfectly. Here's how that first side panel looks. I might be maybe 1/8 of an inch off here. It's not anything I'm worried about. This side I have matched up perfectly. Don't stress over that little bit. But you can see this looks really good. Let's pop it out and look at that curve. And if you had contrasting materials, you could definitely see it a little bit better, but you can see the curve looks great. So for me, I do not think you need to hand baste, glue, staple, anything like that. I think if you take it slow, 1 stitch at a time, you could definitely do it. But if it makes it more enjoyable of a sew for you to hand baste, clip, glue, staple. Do those things. Do whatever works best for you, because we all have different things that stress us out or that help us have a more enjoyable experience. So I'm going to go ahead and clip around just the first side. Since I ended up unclipping that second side, I'm not even going to bother clipping it right now. I'm kind of rolling this front together so it's kind of like a cup or a bowl. It's rounded so that I can get these two pieces lining up and matching straight here at the top. I think, in my opinion, getting it started is the hardest part. Once you get those first few stitches and get it stabilized, it's a lot easier. So I'm just setting my needle down. I'm making sure everything's in line. I'm feeling for any like bumps or puckers, and I'll take my first 2 stitches and then back stitch, and then I know I'm okay then to move forward. Just a very slow, relaxing sew, making sure that everything lines up. Okay, I got the other side so you can see everything looks good there. Let's just pop this right sides out so you can see how that's looking. Everything looks super cute. Now I'm going to trim up the overhang there. She says to do that in the pattern, so I will trim up the overhang there on the sides to get that cleaned up. And then I will keep this one turned like this, because in a sense we're just going to drop this lining into our exterior. I'm going to do those same steps for my exterior. I'll do those off camera, but it's the exact same thing, no difference. I will be clipping half of the side and going really slow, and then I'll leave the other side unclipped, so I'm just kind of pulling, finagled around. You don't have to, that's just what works best for me. So when I come back, I'll have the lining and both the exterior done, and then we'll move on to our next step. I finished sewing the exterior and the lining, and then what I did was I just took my exterior and I turned it right sides out, and then I left my lining wrong sides out and I just dropped it in. So the wrong sides together. I took the time to match up the side seams first, and I nested those seams. I had one seam going one way, the other going the other way, and so I just kind of nested them together, and then I clipped all the way around. This is how it looks. Completely adorable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste all along here just with 1/8 of an inch, just to really connect these two so I can move the clips, so that way it's not such a big deal whenever I'm sewing the next step. I'll slide it under my machine. This is just going to be 1/8 of an inch, so it really doesn't matter too much if your threads match, because you won't see them after we do the other steps. Okay, so now that I have that basted together, we're just going to set it aside and we're going to start working on the zipper panels. For the zipper panels, we're going to talk first about the magnetic snap. For your exterior pieces, go ahead and lay them the way they're supposed to be. And just as a side note, you could do this after you attach your zipper if you want. I'm just doing mine first. But I have my zipper panels going the way I want them to go, the right direction, I guess I should say. You're going to put the same magnetic snap. So for this one, it's going to be both of the female snaps at the top, both of the male snaps at the bottom. So what we're going to do with this is they won't close like this, they will close this way. So make for sure that each of your zipper panels can close on itself. Female, a male, female, male. Or you can do it the opposite way, but you have to have 2 different snaps on the same zipper panel piece. Once you have that done, then we're just going to attach the zipper to these zipper panel pieces just like we would any other zipper panel. So for me, what I do is I'll just go ahead and start with one. So I am going to use my lining piece, and I'm going to have it right sides up. I'm going to take my zipper tape, I'm going to place it on top right sides up, and then I'm just going to baste along here. If you're someone who likes to use double-sided tape, just use your double-sided tape, and you can sew both of them at the same time instead of, like I do, one at a time. So there's that first one. So my print is directional, so I want to make sure that I have the moth going the same way. Just flip it over, have them right sides together. Make sure you match up all along the top and this long straight edge. This time I will sew with that full seam allowance to attach these pieces together. I don't have the zipper pull on just so I don't have to fight with chasing it, but if you're afraid you'll forget it, you could always put it on in the beginning. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull these pieces apart, and I'm going to clip the raw edges together. I'm going to top stitch down the edge I just sewed and then baste around the raw edges. Just as a side note, the pattern doesn't have you do this step yet. You do this step, but she has you sew on the other side first, then top stitch and baste all the way around. Just a personal preference. So now I'm just going to repeat those same steps to attach the lining to this piece. Lining right sides up, take that zipper panel, place it right sides up, and I'm going to match up that top edge again. I'm going to come to the back to do it. It'll be a little bit easier, I think, to see where that curve is. I'm just going to add one clip there, just hold it in place until I get it over the machine, baste this down. And now I'm going to take that exterior piece, and I have mine upside down right now, flip it over so that the zipper and the lining are both right sides together with the exterior. Again, matching it up at the top, adding just one clip there so I can hold it in place until I get it over to the machine. So with that full seam allowance this time, pull these two pieces wrong sides together, top stitch down the finished edge, baste around the raw edges just like we did on the other one. I'm going to add my zipper pull on. I'm going to take the zipper pull into the middle. Go ahead and clip the extra zipper tape off. I'm going to melt the edges of my zipper tape just to help me a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pull out this binding. The designer tells us we're adding the binding before we attach them. I'm a little nervous about this, but I trust this designer to know the best way to do this. So when I'm going to add this binding, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold one edge to the wrong side just so it's a finished edge. So I'm just going to finger press that about a 1/2 inch, and then we're going to add this binding right sides together with this exterior zipper panel piece. So here is how that looks. I'm going to start on a straight edge. I'm going to go all the way around here with a basting stitch. You could even lengthen your stitch length if you wanted to make it a little bit quicker. But I don't want to, when I'm doing this basting, even though this has a lot of stretch, I'm not going to be pulling it tight to stretch it around here. I'm going to kind of let it be falling loosely around the edges. I do not like to have to sew on the binding when I fold it over that it is really a tight binding. I like it to be just a little bit loose. It gives me a little bit more, I feel like, ability to pull and tug and get it in the right shape. Just a personal thought. I'm having the binding and the raw edge of these zipper panels matching, and I'm just basting all around. I'm curving it as I go, kind of pulling to make for sure. If you want, get out your stiletto and hold it there if it makes you feel a little bit better with that. No tricky spots here, just sewing slow and keeping everything in line. You can see I'm not pulling tight. I'm leaving some puckering there because I want the extra amount. I just want this laying flat. Do not put any tension on it while you're sewing it around. So now we're coming up to where we started with that overlap. I'm going to trim off some of this extra. What I really like is to finish this edge by folding it wrong sides together and having it right up against that other piece, just so I don't have any just so I don't have a lot of extra bulk. Be careful anytime you get your scissors around your binding. I have accidentally cut through my binding and just made a horrible mess for myself before, so be careful with that. So you can see I'm just folding this raw edge wrong sides together, and I'm getting it to just pretty much about right up against this other piece, so those two pieces aren't overlapping, they're just up against each other. I'm going to finish sewing around. Now the designer gives a really cool trick here, and I am very excited to try this tip because I've never tried this before, never thought about it, but this situation is a problem for me. Whenever I fold these pieces under to finish the binding, it's always a little finagly. I have to spend a little more time here, but she says to baste these pieces together and that will help with that. So I just clipped them. Now I'm just going to baste those edges, just another 1/8 inch to baste them together. She says this will help me to have an easier time when I'm turning them under. So I'm going to flip it this way just so I can see and make for sure it stays kind of in line. Okay, have those clipped. Mine shifted a little, so I'm just going to take the extra edge off. It's not even a 1/16 inch that I'm taking off there. So here's how mine looks. I had those basted there. You can see the overlap. She says that we are now going to refer to this piece as piece G. All of these pieces have letters to them, and so this is now piece G. What we're going to do now is we're going to find the quarter marks of this piece, the quarter marks of this piece, and then we are going to clip them together. Your magnet and your zipper will be clipping to this highest point here. So let's go ahead and find the quarter marks of both these pieces, and just remember you're clipping the lining against the lining. The exterior won't be against the exterior because we're clipping it like this. So I'm going to go off camera, I'm going to find those marks, clip it together, we'll come back and sew it, and then we'll bind it together. I have everything clipped together. Let's look about it and talk about it. So when you look at the front or the back of your bag, you should see the zipper tape. The zipper is going to be ending and starting at the highest points of this pouch. Here in the bottom parts, this lower parts on the side, there's no zipper here on the side parts. It's only going from your front to your back, so it'll close like this. Also, just do a double check to make sure your magnets look good. You just want to make sure everything looks good. It should already be good, but just double check everything. I have it clipped all the way around. I'm looking at the exterior for my zipper. I can't open and close my zipper. I always find it good to kind of run through my head all these common sense checks before I start sewing. It always saves me time on seam ripping later. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew directly on the binding. So I'm going to have the main panels and the sides, everything exterior on the bed of my machine. I'll be sewing on the binding the entire way around using the full seam allowance in the pattern. I am definitely going slow. I'm so excited to see this. I do not want to mess it up. I'm just going to start right here on one side. I'm going to go slow because I want to make for sure I'm doing the proper seam allowance, and that for each of these stitches I'm watching this binding to make sure it's not getting a pucker in it, because if we sew over a pucker in the binding, we will have that showing when we turn it. So let's just be very careful that we're taking the time to smooth out the binding every stitch we take. You're going to be rotating your bag, but just press it flat so that you can see everything easily, and you're getting a straight sew right there and lining up with your seam allowance. Don't worry about manhandling the bag. We can press it, we can use clips to smooth it out. It'll be okay. When you come to the side, make sure you pull this bag out of the way. You don't want to sew like over your side and have it kind of pinched like this and sew over. So make for sure you're just sewing through the binding and the side piece, and it's not bunched up. Before we go through the slow part of flipping the binding and turning it, let's just make for sure we don't have any puckers or anything like that. Everything looks good. I didn't sew over any. There's a couple, like right here, looks like I sewed over a little teeny one, but that one I'm not worried about. I could even stretch it out. I could clip that little stitch. I might just go ahead and clip that stitch and have it laying flat, because where I'm going to sew around again with the binding, it won't be too big of a deal. So I had one little teeny area that I didn't feel comfortable with, but I'm going to sew again with that seam allowance, so that'll catch that area again. Let's start right here at the zipper and at the tag. Get all of these extra threads out of the way. I don't plan on having to trim down my seam allowance at all. So what I'm going to plan on doing is just flipping this, tucking that raw edge in, and then folding it over. On the areas the designer says where your seams are a little thicker than others, you might have to fold less. I think mine's going to be consistently the same all the way around here. Now I am seeing a big mistake of mine that I didn't think about. I shouldn't have cut my binding like this. I should have cut my binding so the stripes were going this way. How cute would that have been? That's a big mistake of mine. I cut stripy binding all the time. I just wasn't thinking whenever I was cutting on the bias. So my fault, mine won't look as pretty as maybe yours will be. But that just means I have to sew another one so it'll be perfect. You can see I'm just tucking and folding. I'm wanting the folded edge to just cover those stitches is what I'm wanting to see. So here's my row of stitches. I'm going to fold and wrap this binding around so that the folded edge is just covering that previous row of stitching. That way, whenever I sew with that same seam allowance, it'll line up that the stitches will go right here at the edge of the binding. If you do it correctly, it's basic math. Now, of course, as humans, we make mistakes, so it's not always perfect, but with practice, we get better and better. If this bag doesn't fit together properly, I would recheck my pieces, recheck my seam allowances, because on mine, it is a perfect fit. The pieces fit perfectly together. I think everything is a great fit, a very well-tested pattern. So now I have it folded all the way around. I'm gonna open this up and just kind of push this bag out flat so I can kind of see how everything's looking and if it looks really good and even on that bonding before I sew it. So let's go ahead, look at the shape. Oh my gosh, look at that shape. It's gonna be so cute. The bonding looks really good. I'm really okay with how it looks except for the fact that I cut it wrong. Can't do anything about that now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna flatten it out. This is how I'm gonna sew this bonding on. I want to sew from my exterior because that's the side that matters to me the most. If I miss a spot on the other side, I can fix it, but I think it'll be okay, honestly. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my foot so that the edge is right against the folded edge of the bonding. This should allow me to get that correct seam allowance all the way around. This is a step you go slow, no rushing, but there's nothing hard or tricky about it as long as you take your time and just watch this seam allowance constantly. Don't be afraid to take one stitch at a time, adjust, stop what you're doing, fix a folded edge if it pops out. Everyone can bond. It's just you gotta go slow and learn the best way to do it. There's nothing hard about bonding, and whenever you see a really nice finish on your bag with bonding, I think you'll love it as much as I do. My Berryfield Park pouch from Torie and Wren is complete. Let's just check things out, make sure everything looks okay. Is my bonding perfect? For the most part. You can see I missed it right here. I'll probably clean that up. And when I say clean that up, that means I will make for sure that the bonding's showing on both sides. It's not a necessity. It's caught. It's sewn. It's just I stitched in the ditch here by accident and you can't see it, so it just looks a little wonky. Let's go ahead and use our hands to kind of open everything up inside, smooth it out. Let me switch camera angles so we can see it better and so we can get a good look on how this pouch looks. Look how cute this little dumpling pouch is. Super, super cute. My seam is right here, which is a really unfortunate place since it's right on the front. That's okay. I could have tried to figure that out, but we got to be okay with those things. You can see how cute this is. And so even though we see the opening here, we know that's not a true opening because when we open it up, we have this adorable shape here. We can unzip it. You can see inside. This is such a cute little pouch. It's adorable. I think the thing I like about it so much is that it looks like there's a frame in it, but there's not any frame, of course. It looks like a coin pouch, but there is no wire, so it's cute. My bonding is horrible because I cut it wrong. I'm tempted to redo this. If you see this pouch and it looks different, I redid it. I may do that because I just don't like that for pictures. I might cut that. And so if I do it, it'll just be the straps will just be going this way. It's not too hard to work. I think I'm going to do it. Just because I really want it to look pretty. I just didn't like the way I cut it. So I might redo that. But otherwise, this pouch is adorable. Sits nicely. Great structure. Super cute. I love it so much. Definitely check out the pattern. Check out Torie and Wren's Instagram account. She has so many cute versions of this pattern. I think I would like having a tag maybe on the inside here too. That's so cute. Love this pouch. Love the design. Great, unique way to do a pouch. You guys know I love pouches and this one is adorable. Thank you so much for watching another tutorial of mine. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you consider making this pouch. I know I'll be making many more of them. I think it's just going to look great sitting on a counter, on a craft show table, and just holding a super cute gift. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have an amazing day.